coming down harder. The gate is swinging open and shut. Branches are coming off the trees, and the communications are starting to get dicey. You know. Yeah, so the wind seems to have changed directions, and it's now just blasting these windows, and we're all in the bathroom. As I always say, the bathroom is the best place to be during really bad wind.
I'm Courtney Riley, here with guest speaker Monica Gonzalez. Welcome to our show, NU15, News Under 15 Minutes, where today we'll be talking about Hurricane Maria and the response that was given to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria by the U.S. and the factors that was caused by. In September 2017, a Category 5 hurricane known as Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico and surrounding areas that left about $90 billion in damage and left many citizens devastated. Hurricane Maria, being the largest hurricane to hit in the area in over 80 years, heavily damaged the environment and agriculture as well as the territory's economy. Because of this damage, an 8% decline in the population occurred, leaving many of the citizens to migrate to the mainland of the United States. This hurricane left the government, people, and economy struggling to regenerate themselves and recover. Although technically being a part of the United States, Puerto Rico was left relying on help from foundations, companies, and organizations such as FEMA for economic support. But even with the support from FEMA, many citizens were denied support for numerous reasons. Today we'll be talking about Puerto Rico. I'm here with guest speaker Monica Gonzalez, who's an expert in natural disasters in both economics and human resources. For our first question, we have, according to research, many Puerto Ricans are of Native Americans, African Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Caucasian. And since we live in such a diverse society, do you think that the race and ethnicity of Puerto Ricans contributed to the United States and how the United States responded to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria?
So it is known that Puerto Rico is very diverse, and I do believe that race of the citizens of Puerto Rico has had an impact on the amount of support from the United States given after Hurricane Maria. In one hand, the United States is very diverse, just like Puerto Rico, but we're still living in a time where sadly racism is still alive. On the other hand, it has been proven that our current president, Donald Trump, in fact, has made racist comments about people in the past. Of course, there's a lot of factors that have an impact as to why the United States had a late response time, but I do feel like racism definitely is a factor.
As we talk furthermore into the disaster, we mention the response from the United States. Puerto Rico was left in $50 billion worth of disaster after Hurricane Maria, and this is not including Hurricane Irma that occurred around the same time. President Trump's response was not what many of us were expecting. He claimed that the U.S. gave Puerto Rico $91 billion in natural disaster money, but Puerto Rico released a study showing only $12.6 billion were actually received. The race of the island, we also analyzed the religion of the island as a whole. Most of Puerto Ricans fall under the Roman Catholic or Jewish religion. With that in mind, including the history between religion and communism without the countries now, do you think that because of the United States stance with communism that it would play a big role since many people in America either don't have a religion or practice other versions that might not fall under the Jewish or Roman Catholic religion of Puerto Ricans?
I think it could be a big issue because of how our society works in modern time. For example, since the Holocaust in Germany, many Americans have been skeptical about the Jewish religion. Many people make religious comments towards others, specifically people who are German or from Germany. Another reason that the United States response is so crucial is because of our stance with communism. President Donald Trump's stance with communism is strong. He doesn't believe in communism, and with past historic battles that included the U.S., communism is not a friendly subject in the country. Since Puerto Rico tends to follow two religions, even though their constitution allows them the freedom of religion, the U.S. could not be seen as them. Communists is not wanting to support them in certain times.
Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico's government accepted a tax break that attracted many pharmaceutical companies and businesses to the island. which created Puerto Rico to gain more money. But in the early 1990s, Puerto Rico's government cut the tax break, leading them to borrow more money and causing them to be more in debt. Do you think that since it looks like Puerto Rico created their debt themselves, do you think it led to the reason why the United States couldn't contribute to or respond to Puerto Rico in the way that citizens expected us to respond to them?
In fact, yes. This can definitely be a reason as to why the United States refused to help after Hurricane Maria. Because the economy in Puerto Rico is lacking, the chances of getting anything of use back from Puerto Rico is very slim. To help better describe the mindset of the government could be, let's say that there's a massive earthquake in California. California is one of the 50 states of the United States, so the government is obligated to help. California helping the overall economy. But Puerto Rico is not officially a state of the United States. It has its own economy and government. The United States would not benefit from pouring money into Puerto Rico when there are organizations like FEMA made to help out after natural disasters like Hurricane Maria. Although Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, unfortunately, their economy and government is separate from ours.
Since Puerto Rico has never been anything less than an island off the coast of the United States, do you think that the stance between the two relationships is a reason why Puerto Rico received less help than needed was because of the relationship between the two countries?
So the relationship between the two countries varies based on the subject. In terms of money, citizens of Puerto Rico receive the rights, benefits, and responsibilities equal to those enjoyed by the other citizens of the states of the Union. But in terms of politics, the Puerto Rico government is not allowed to participate in ground voting events because they're not yet a state, rather a territory of the United States. I do believe that the relationship between the two countries has had an effect on the response time and amount of aid received simply. If a natural disaster with the same amount of damage were to hit Florida, the government would be quicker to help and would most likely give more aid. The only difference being Florida is a state where Puerto Rico is a territory. Continuing on the background of Puerto Rico and the United States relationships, we discovered that in the early 1900s, the U.S. invaded Puerto Rico, taking over the sugar factories and trade as well as enslaving Puerto Ricans and sending them off to war, which could have led to the reason why Puerto Rico's economy was so poor even before Hurricane Maria. With that being said, was Puerto Rico's economy solemnly based on their own government, based on the United States taking over, or was it both?
Through the feminist perspective, could you tell me more about how women were affected by the natural disaster, and what about the feminine hygiene products that need to be supplied to women in poverty?
Yeah, so with natural disasters, it puts women and girls in more danger than any other time. Women are mostly viewed as sex objects in today's society, and in a time of disaster, power is out, and women are in search of resources or at risk of being attacked by men increase. Not only are women viewed as sex objects, but the stereotypical job of women is a caregiver. Many caregivers are stuck taking care of men, the typical sex offenders. Since caregivers are always in crowded places and miraculous numbers of men, it puts them at risk of violence as well as them looking for new. The amount of money that was given to Puerto Rico to help with the natural disasters after the hurricane was very little, especially for a territory with very little support of their economy. So without the amount of support that they need, the government can't provide people with the needs and resources that are required. In general, women, as others in poverty, can't afford to buy hygiene products since the prices range so high. But in time of a natural disaster, most organizations and support groups don't supply the hygiene products for the country. They don't mention it on the list of supplies, meaning it isn't getting to them, leaving women and others in need of resources that aren't available.
Just for clarification, since the U.S. is ran by a male, could this have been or became a big factor in why the United States responded to Puerto Rico with the amount of support that citizens are disagreeing with?
So, yes, the President of the United States is a male, Donald Trump, and we actually have yet to have a female president. This could honestly go either way. This could be a factor as why there wasn't much aid. The women in Puerto Rico can be overlooked and not taken into consideration when feminine hygiene products are needed. Most have children, and overall, the safety for women when there's a lack of power is not being considered during or after this hurricane. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I am guest speaker Monica, and thank you Courtney Riley for having me on NU15, where we discuss Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria. Now let's talk about the aftermath and impact this hurricane has had on Puerto Rico. Immediately after the hurricane, many families and citizens were left without houses and jobs, leaving them in unsafe situations or not being able to financially support themselves. Devastation left by Hurricane Maria led to a spike in deaths after the incident, with a reported 3,000 excess deaths due to numerous factors, that didn't include the hurricane itself, but rather the effects of it. The effects of this hurricane resulted in such a devastation because first, the citizens were not prepared for a hurricane to hit as strong as this one, and the lack of financial support led to the effects to get much worse. The lack of power, fresh water, warm shelter, and even the lack of access to medical help all are factors that led to this overall devastation. The impact of this massive storm left over $100 billion of damage, and it was so severe that the effects of the hurricane were felt longer than a year after the incident. It wasn't until late August 2018 when power was finally restored to the citizens of Puerto Rico, almost a whole year after the hurricane, a whole year that the citizens living in the territory had to live without power. All we can do to show our support to those who lost their lives and that were affected by this awful hurricane is to better be prepared for an event like this and to push for our government to make territories such as Hurricane Maria a state. Pushing these territories to become a state can better prepare for an event such as this one in the future. By raising the chances of financial support from the government, a lot of the deaths caused by this event could have been prevented. If the territory received proper assistance and the length of time it took to recover couldn't have been avoided if our government responded appropriately. We need to continue raising awareness and give support to those who were affected by this awful event.
Puerto Rico is in need of help. Whether it's donating or volunteering, we can all do a little something to help Puerto Rico and send relief. Some simple ways to help out is volunteering at your local food relief or contacting a representative to ask to send more help to Puerto Rico. Even volunteering to help create emergency backpacks and helping out at the Red Cross. If everyone does one thing for 2 hours out of their time, we can help gain power back in many cities, send relief organizations to Puerto Rico, and even restore many houses and neighborhoods back to normal living conditions. In order to make this happen, we need you to participate.